All right, so we continue along, and next up on the hot seat, he is, of course, the head coach down at Maryland, and they're getting ready to start the season Saturday on the road at Richmond. He is Coach John Tillman, and he's back with us now here on GCR. Coach, it's Glenn and Patrick Stevens. Always appreciate you taking the time for us. Thanks so much for hopping on.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Coach, a lot obviously with your team to cover, and I think the first place is we start with the guys that are maybe coming back this season. And I know how important Eric Maliver is, but I guess the other word is between the pipes. Is Logan McNaney ready to go to start the season? And you got some pretty good goalie play at times a year ago when he was gone. What's that going to look like during the course of the year?
Yeah, I think a tough ask to throw a freshman into the schedule that we have here, and I thought Roop he definitely gave us a chance to win almost every game we played, and again kind of getting thrown in game two with not a lot of preseason to be able to get the experience that you want. So I'm very thankful for kind of his approach and obviously the way the guys kind of fought in front of him. But like any freshman, right, you're going to have your good moments, bad moments. But I know we have a lot of faith in Brian and Logan coming back. I think, the guys feel the same way. Logan, there's just a comforting feel of he's been there. He's proven he's played well in the big moments. His record speaks for itself. And so there's not too much that happens on the field that Logan's going to be surprised at. And not only, whether it's, the shooters that he sees, but also in the clearing game and changing defenses. And he just never seems to get rattled. And I think that is something that, as a coach, you just love to have a guy like that regardless of what's going on in the game, when they bring it in, they have a huddle, the guys are going to have confidence in him.
When you look at what you've been able to get out of the tradition of the number one jersey through the years. Last year, obviously, a little bit of a breakthrough there, putting Brett Makar, a defensive player, in there. Another defensive player this year, Ajax Zapatello. What is it about Ajax that sort of led to that honor, and how healthy is he and ready to go is he as he heads into his senior year?
Yeah, I think we thought long and hard about last year, if we were going to, stay with more of an offensive theme with the number one. But I think as a staff, we just kept coming back to what Brett Makar has meant to our program on and off the field and who he was. So I just felt like it was very fitting. I think there's also, with that number, there becomes more eyeballs on you and there's a little more scrutiny. So having somebody, that can handle that spotlight, and is not going to really be impacted, and again, a lot of times the guys who have been best wearing that number were guys that really weren't seeking the number. They're kind of like, well, I'm not a number guy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of almost the answer you'd like, because they're just playing because they love to play. They're not seeking any, accolades or, recognition. And I think, Brett's been that way. And obviously Ajax, very similar. I think being around Brett for those 3 years really helped Ajax. Just Brett's consistency. You just knew what you're getting from Brett every single day. He was very locked in. He was very focused. He was a very selfless guy. He was a hard worker. Details mattered. He was very passionate. He was, a guy that cared about his teammates. So I think Ajax is wired a lot of that way, a lot of those ways. But I think he's another guy that he's going to come do his thing regardless of what number he wears. I think there was a lot of pride for him to wear 36 because that's what Jesse Bernhardt wore. And there's a number of other great players, and I could go on, but, like Timmy Muller, there's been a great tradition of guys wearing that number. But we just felt like it made sense. And there were several other guys we could have gone with. But again, I think Ajax, it's just business as usual. He's a guy that since the day he's gotten here, he's had a great approach. He's made guys around him better. I think when you think of like a guy who is a Maryland Terp, on and off the field, his character, his toughness, his relentlessness, his investment, I just think Ajax is a great representative, and we'll see what happens next year. We've kind of waited till the spring and given the guys the fall. And luckily it's just not been a distraction. It's just kind of the guys were like happy for Ajax and we just kept moving on.
You've obviously had a number of successful seasons at Maryland. Maybe last year was a little more challenging, certainly much more challenging than the year before when you went undefeated and won a national title. How do you feel like guys have responded to how that all unfolded last year? Because obviously not every year you're going to have injury luck that works out for you the way it had the previous couple years, and obviously didn't have last year. Obviously some teams are going to be a little more experienced than others. This one's probably somewhere in the middle between those last two. But how have you seen some of these holdovers respond to having gone through a year like last year where it frankly wasn't all that easy for you guys to accomplish as much as you did?
Yeah, I think, part of what you hope happens through this journey that the guys go on, right? They come to college and you want as many things to happen that could replicate what's going to happen to them after they leave here. So obviously learning how to handle success is one thing, but also handling adversity, and guys having to make sacrifices and the ability to stay, like in the moment and stick-to-itiveness and, bouncing back from things, that sense of resiliency. I think, you obviously you're trying to win every game, but when you don't win, you try to learn, you try to teach the guys and you want them to learn, hey, sometimes, life throws you curveballs. You've got to handle it the right way. No one's going to feel sorry for you. And next guy's got to be ready. If you're on the team, like injuries happen. So you got to always prepare like a starter. And then as a coach, you just have to be ready to, all right, if somebody does go down, what do we need to do differently? Do we need to tweak things so that this group, based on injuries, can be more successful, not just plug him in and expect the same results? So, adapting to what you do have. And at times last year, I think our guys learned, like when they were locked in and we were playing well, we could play as well as anybody. I think they also learned that, hey, if you don't do little things right, or we're not on the same page, or we're sloppy, or another team is playing very well, hey, we're pretty pedestrian, like we're susceptible. So we just have to make sure that we are executing at a high level. We are detailed oriented. We are doing what we need to do. We're competing at a high level. We're playing unselfishly, and we've got to do that for 60 minutes plus, or hey, it may not go well.
1 week from this Saturday, you see coaches overlooking CQ Stadium right now. They'll be taking on Loyola there for their home opener 1 week from Saturday. Coach John Tillman with us here on the College Lacrosse Preview Show. Coach, I brought up Eric. I don't want to just move right past it. Given how significant he was 2 years ago, I know you guys ended up having plenty of capable scorers last season. Is it reasonable to expect that Eric might come back and be a bit of an alpha for you offensively this year?
Well, I think it'll be an important part for us. Having that experience, I think is really important. But we have to remember, he hasn't played in a game in 2 years. So I think we got to be realistic in terms of our expectations that, like anybody, my sense typically is that, guys, it takes a little time to get back to where you were. And I think there's always a tendency with athletes, right? You want to pick up where you left off, and sometimes you can try to do too much. And I think that's something that, we got to be careful with him, is just to, let him get back, get comfortable, take what the game gives them. Don't feel like, you need to get back to where you used to be. You're going to get there. And let's do it out of our scheme. Obviously having Braden with a year of experience with him, those guys have good chemistry. They're both from Atlanta. They're good friends. I think it's just nice to have, two guys with good amount of experience down there, and two guys that I do think they enjoy playing with each other, and they do have good chemistry already. And again, not having either guy feel like, hey, they need to make the play every time. It's really just playing good offense, and out of the offense, taking what the other team gives you and making sure that we're not trying to do too much.
Obviously a new offensive coordinator, a late hire, bringing Mike Phipps over from Navy to replace Jake Bernhardt, who went up to Colby College up in Maine. How have the guys responded here over the last few weeks in the preseason? Since obviously didn't get to work with Mike during the fall, since he wasn't hired until late December.
The transition's been very good. I think a lot of that is due to Mike's personality. Anybody that knows Michael Phipps, he's a pretty easy guy to get along with. He's just a very welcoming guy. He's a guy that part of the reason why he's here is he's really big on relationships. And I think that's something that I heard through the process, and I haven't known Michael for a long time. We wanted somebody that was going to be very big in terms of the relationship part. I feel like that's a big part of it now with the kids these days and the college athletes is, getting to know the players and the players getting to know you and building that rapport and that trust. And I think he's done a good job of that. Michael and I spent a lot of time over the break, just in early conversations when the job was open, but also, once he decided to take the job, there's just a lot of similarities in terms of the things that, when we coach, things that we believed in, principles, philosophies. But there were some things that maybe he has done that we haven't done that we felt like we could bring into the fold. Since Matt Rambo and Colin Heacock left, we took a big turn in 2018 in terms of style of play. And I think every year we've tweaked it a little bit. We've stayed true to a lot of the things that we want to try to do. And I don't think right now we're trying to blow it all up all over again. So finding somebody that, again, just believed in a lot of things that we believed in. And Michael had watched a lot of our games. Some of his terminology, to be honest, is exactly what we call things. So I think that's made that transition a lot easier. And I think the guys have really enjoyed it so far. Certainly a lot to work on this time of year, just getting kind of your timing down, working on your execution, your stick work. But it's been fun so far.
I need to ask, Coach, is there any answer yet about Dante Trader and whether or not he's going to be spending any time with you guys this year?
I'd say no final answer.
Okay.
I realized last year was a lot for him, going right from football and having about a week or so and then joining us. I felt like he never really got a time to catch his breath. And then he did have, dealt with a big injury last year while he was with us. And I think part of it was pre-existing. And my only, disappointment with that is I know how good a player Dante is. And if he was fully healthy, I think he would have played more to the level that he wanted to, because his standards are so high. He was great for us. I was really thankful for all the things he did for us, and he did a lot. But if you'd seen a healthy Dante, I think you would have seen even more, just because I have that much faith in him as a player. We've left the door open for him. I think, doing what he's done, he's been going at a really, like, if you know Dante, he only knows one speed, and smashing into big bodies for the last, 6-7 months, it does take its toll. A lot of times you're coming up to tackle guys that are pretty big. So, I think right now the biggest thing is for him to kind of mentally, catch his breath, physically catch his breath. And if he decides to join us, obviously we'd love to have him. And if he doesn't, we're going to be really grateful for the time that he gave us last year. And I'm just a big fan. I know our guys are too. He'll stop by the office or he'll stop by the locker room. We really care about him a lot. He's just a really good guy. So if he decides that he wants to do it and it works with his schedule, we're certainly open to it. And if Coach Locks is willing to do it, that'd be great too. So we'll just see what happens.
We'll look forward to seeing a lot about this team during the course of the season. As I mentioned, gets underway on the road on Saturday down at Richmond. Coach John Tillman, always appreciate you. We'll be checking in during the course of the year. Thanks for spending a couple of minutes with us this morning as we get ready for the start of the season.
Thanks for having me, guys. Thanks for covering lacrosse. We appreciate it.
It's Coach John Tillman from down at the University of Maryland.